जशी व्यतिरेक साधना चा अनुभव आपल्याला ध्यानातून येतो, तशा अन्वय साधनाचा पण अनुभव येऊ शकतो का?
अन्वय साधना ही व्यतिरेकानंतर आहे. जोपर्यंत व्यतिरेकाने आपण मूळ स्वरूप गाठलं नाही. व्यतिरेक म्हणजे काय?
नेती 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 करत करत शेवटी
नाही, नेती एकदम पुढच्या गोष्ट झाली. पण तरी इथे एक्सक्लुडिंग I am without body, I am without sense organs, I am without mind. So I am trying to exclude them and think about myself till I reach pure consciousness. And when I experience pure consciousness, then from the standpoint of pure consciousness as myself, when I try to connect myself, Anvaya is connecting again. When I look back to intellect, then I found that intellect is nothing else than myself. I am the intellect, I am the mind. This is Anvaya. So then this is not possible without Vyatireka is successful. So it is like ascending the steps and then descending back, but with a vision of the self, where I have experienced myself to be pure consciousness. Then as pure consciousness, when I look back to intellect, mind, etc., I don't see them as different from me. So that they are not different from me. The world is not different from me. This is Anvaya. So looking at the consciousness from present standpoint of view, it is other than BMI, OET, PFT. When I reach the consciousness and look back, I don't see anything other than consciousness. That is Anvaya. Anvaya is again linking back.
Linking back. Okay.
What I excluded earlier, from my present egoistic standpoint, I thought the body is not there. Body is not the self. Sense organ is not the self. Mind is not the self. Likewise, finally the ego itself disappears into the pure consciousness to become the self. So when I become the self, then I look back. What about these equipments? What has happened to them? I have rejected them or excluded them from my consideration. So now I look back to them, and then I don't find intellect as something other than myself. At present, I am different, and BMI are equipment for me to manifest and function. And world of OET is other than myself. So all these things there is a difference in triad of experience. I am different, equipments are different, world is different. But when by the method of Vyatireka, that is exclusion, when I exclude and check up whether still I remain, by excluding the body, I remain. I am not excluded. So as in the deep sleep, I remain, but the body is not there. Mind is not there. So therefore, I am totally a different entity in spite of so many things gathered around me via my complex. So this has to be first experienced at the seat of meditation as pure consciousness. When it is pure consciousness, it is without reference to any conditioning. But now from the standpoint of pure consciousness, when I look back, I don't see them as different from me. So they are nothing but, we can say in Gaudapadiya language, we can say that they are all projections on me. So then the serpent is not different from the rope. At this moment when I am objectifying it as serpent, for me the rope is away. Therefore I have to exclude myself and reach the rope. When I reach the rope, then I see the serpent is not different from me. I am myself is seen as serpent by someone else, but is not away from me. So serpent is not away from the rope. Where there is a rope, there is a serpent. So serpent is seen by the deluded when there is a rope. Now the deluded has to exclude all these factors which delude him, the mind, intellect, etc. And then he has to see himself. He will see himself as consciousness, and then he will see everything in the world as consciousness. So that is why this being in a sequential manner, and chronology is the first is Vyatireka Sadhana. Then it is followed by Anvaya Sadhana.
Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Jagadidamakilam Tavarupam Jagadidamakilam Tavarupam Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Sadrupoham Chidrupoham Sadrupoham Chidrupoham Tanmaya Nityananda Shivoham Tanmaya Nityananda Shivoham Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Deho Naham Jivo Naham Deho Naham Jivo Naham Pratyaga Bhinnam Brahmaivaham Pratyaga Bhinnam Brahmaivaham Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Paramatmaham Paripurnoham Paramatmaham Paripurnoham Anandoham Brahmaivaham Anandoham Brahmaivaham Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Jagadidamakilam Tavarupam Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। अज्ञानान्तर्गहनपतितान् आत्मविद्योपदेशैः त्रातुं लोकान् भवदवशिका तापपापच्यमानान् मुक्त्वा मौनं वटविटपिनो मूलतो निःसरन्ति शम्भोर्मूर्तिश्चरति भुवने शङ्कराचार्यरूपा। मौनव्याख्या प्रकटितपरब्रह्मतत्त्वं युवानं वर्षिष्ठान्तेव सदृशगणैरावृतं ब्रह्मनिष्ठैः आचार्येन्द्रं करकलितचिन्मुद्रमानन्दरूपं स्वात्मा रामं मुदितवदनं दक्षिणामूर्तिमीडे। वटविटपि समीपे भूमिभागे निषण्णं सकलमुनिजनानां ज्ञानदातारमारात् त्रिभुवनगुरुमीशं दक्षिणामूर्तिदेवं जननमरणदुःखच्छेददक्षं नमामि। चित्रं वटतरोर्मूले वृद्धाः शिष्या गुरुर्युवा गुरोस्तु मौनं व्याख्यानं शिष्यास्तु छिन्नसंशयाः निधये सर्वविद्यानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां गुरवे सर्वलोकानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। नमः प्रणवार्ताय शुद्धज्ञानैकमूर्तये निर्मलाय प्रशान्ताय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः।
विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतम् पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतं यथा निद्रया यत्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्री दक्षिणामूर्तये। बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः माया कल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतम् मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। Hari Om friends, welcome to Vichara Sadhana and in the Sri Dakshinamurty Stotram. We are on the second verse and with a gap of last Thursday where we discussed about Swami Vivekananda's thoughts. Now we are back on our main text. We have covered in the second stanza commentary, we have covered 10th paragraph. So with a gap of 2 weeks, I'll read out that para and we'll see what we can revise. The pure rationalists, when they read the theory of creation in the Upanishads, may again ask the question, namely, how can Maya condition the Supreme? They forget that the creation is only to those who are looking at the world from the ego-bound attitude, Jiva Bhavana. The very Maya is nothing but the mind and intellect equipment in an individual. And this Maya itself is only an imagination, Sankalpa, in the infinite. So we have seen here mainly 2 points, that the Maya is nothing but mind and intellect equipment in the individual. Therefore, all this concept of world perception, etc., is all belonging to the individuals. What about the creator and creation? Is a point left out, which we have not discussed so far. But we might have to discuss this with reference to the context. Now, here they forget that creation is only to those who are looking from at the world from ego standpoint. So one who has objectified the world as something different from him, as Mr. Ego PFTI, he will only perceive the world something as different from himself. So this was the first statement, and the second statement is the very Maya is nothing but mind and intellect equipment in an individual. And this Maya itself is only an imagination in the infinite. So now this Maya in the individual, what does it mean? Which Maya?
It is a avidya Maya.
Very good. So avidya Maya it is. So what is the, and then here it is said, here Maya is nothing but mind and intellect equipment. Now whether it is avidya Maya or mind and intellect.
No, a Maya manifest in the form of mind and intellect.
Very good. And now the mind and intellect equipment, here it is said that when the here and Maya itself is only an imagination. This is again third level. That is Sankalpa in the infinite. Now we have to set right the things here and their location. When you say here it is an imagination in the infinite, Sankalpa in the infinite. What is the reference to the context? Here now, in continuation with the first two statements, this is the third statement. Maya is nothing but the Sankalpa in the infinite. What does that mean?
The reflection of Brahman in Maya and is Aham Spurana. And when he thinks about Ekoham Bahusyami, it's one of the Sankalpa.
But that is at Ishvara's level.
You are asking the individual level.
Oh, we are discussing at the individual level in this paragraph.
So, PFTI is
now you change the gear, think afresh, and then say. And Swamiji has directly introduced to individual level only. He is not considering immediately the Ishvara and his creation, etc. Because when it comes to individual, each individual will have his own words of likes and dislikes. It is not the same word he sees. what I see in the world may be different than what you see in the world, in the same situation. So then it all begins with Sankalpa.
So thought in the see, the pure consciousness is in the, like it is the individual is, the nature is pure consciousness, which is called Atman, and the first Sankalpa is the first thought in the like
You overlooked one important word, that is infinite.
infinite. The first thought in the consciousness is the Sankalpa. No?
That is all right. Now we have to take care of the all words that are used by Swamiji in that statement. Sankalpa in the infinite, it is said.
So all pervasive consciousness.
No, all pervasive consciousness is what is there, you said, as pure consciousness in us. You already said that.
Yes.
But when you say that, then it is not considered as infinite. Consciousness comes, consciousness goes.
It is awareness which is infinite, and
Yes.
and we have to factor that in, because we are using Maya as a tool to explain the creation, which is the totality.
Now repeat that. Maya.
Now here the point is, the previous statement says they forget that the creation is only to those who are looking at the world from ego bound attitude, and the very Maya is nothing but the mind and intellect equipment in an individual, and this Maya itself is only an imagination in the infinite. So the reason we have to factor in infinite is because we are talking about the creation. That said, the creation is still valid only from the point of view of the individual. If individual is not there, then there is no creation also. So that is the.
So now how do you relate infinite to the individual?
So infinite then has to be awareness. No, we are talking about infinite awareness in that case.
Right. So when you see the word infinite, you have to relate it to awareness. Infinite light of objectless awareness. Now, Sankalpa in awareness. Can you imagine? We have been all the time talking and discussing about the awareness, infinite awareness, pure all-pervasive consciousness. And the ray of that consciousness in the individual reflects as the Chidabhas, which illumines the within. Right? You have been seeing that. But what happens at the level of infinite awareness, where the first Sankalpa comes? How? When we say that it is infinite objectless awareness, light of infinite objectless awareness. When it say objectless, how comes Sankalpa? So we must allocate or account these things to a proper person or proper thing.
No, but the Sankalpa is in form of Ekoham Bahusyam. So let there be many is the start of object creation.
That is Sankalpa.
That is Sankalpa.
Then where it arises? Here it is said infinite. Okay. So when it is a book, you have to be very concise and precise. You cannot afford to explain and expound much. So it becomes the reader's responsibility to understand it in a proper perspective. For that, he has to refer back to earlier discussion based on Swamiji's commentary. What is the origin of Sankalpa? Sankalpa in the infinite, when you say infinite, is not really concerned with the Sankalpa. Sankalpa must have come later. Infinite has been there all the time. Sankalpa has come later. From where it has come? Though not very frequently, but we have discussed this point.
Mind itself.
By?
Mind itself.
Which mind?
So total mind, Ishvara.
Total mind. Now, when we go to Ishvara, then in that case, we have to restrict ourselves to individual. Can individual?
The consciousness, it is a wave on consciousness. It is the thought is the wave on the consciousness, name and form.
No, on the way means what? It is already in the infinite. And
But
infinite,
now you are asking about individual. No?
yes, so everything we have to answer at the individual level only. Everything. Don't refer to Ishvara and all that. Because Ishvara's story is still different.
But Sankalpa is a thought.
Agreed.
Right. So thought
Allowed.
is raised in the consciousness, wave on consciousness. It is a name and form in the consciousness.
Yeah, go back. It is not immediately, it is consciousness, all right. But when it is said infinite, it is awareness. And individual cannot be away from awareness. Now we have discussed something like Avyakrita. Avyakrita is Prakriti in unmanifest condition. Avyakrita is unmanifest Prakriti. Vyakrita is manifest. Okay. Now the first level is when there is infinite awareness in the awareful being called as Paramatma. The Jiva is essentially Paramatma. Individual level only. It's all within ourselves. When it's an individual level, when Swamiji says, we must get everything in the individual level. I must be in the beginning the awareful being called as Paramatma. Then my contents are infinite awareness because I am eternal. Paramatma as such is Satchidatma, Paramatma, they are all Satchidananda, Paramatma is eternal. And therefore the awareness is infinite. Okay. I am the awareful being whose content is infinite awareness. Now, infinite awareness is the beginning. We have described this as Sattva. Sattva, the beginning of creation is from this word. And Sattva is beingness. Beingness is Sattva. Now, the total, the infinite awareness is there in a state of being. And the power that it has got is drawn by the unmanifest prakriti of Vyakrita. The Avyakrita is there in the infinite, potentially present in the infinite, and it draws the powers from the infinite awareness and then raises the Sankalpa. Sankalpa belongs to Vyakrita Prakriti, manifest Prakriti. In fact, the Avyakrita becomes Vyakrita, unmanifest becomes manifest in the form of Sankalpa. And the power required to initiate or generate the Sankalpa is drawn from infinite awareness. So now this level is, there is Sankalpa in the infinite. So infinite as such in itself there is nothing. But the Prakriti which is very close by, now we require to further think about awareness or awareful being. From where this awareful being and awareness has come? It is the reflection in Maya, right? It is not original. The original is Brahman, reflected in Maya becomes Atman or Paramatman. And so that is also reflection only. Paramatma is a reflection, whose contains is awareness, right? So in the reflection of as Paramatma of Brahman, the reflection of Brahman in Maya as Paramatma, right? This Paramatma is called as awareful being because whose content is infinite awareness. So now so this Paramatma is referred in Tapovan as Chidatma, where Chit is prominent and Atma is secondary. The Brahman is reflected as Atman, but basically it is Maya, the pure knowledge which has taken away and reflected Brahman. So when the Brahman is reflected in Maya, it becomes Paramatman. This Paramatman, therefore, is a reflection. But, but it is of the eternal Brahman, therefore, the Paramatman is also eternal and its contained as awareness is infinite. So eternal, the next to that is infinite. Nitya and Ananta. Okay, so this is one side. Now it has nothing to do with Prakriti. It is, so to say, even reflection as such, though appears to be conditioned by reflecting medium. That's why the rationalists ask this question. How can Supreme is conditioned by Maya? Supreme is never conditioned by Maya. Supreme is Brahman. Brahman is never conditioned by Maya. When Maya takes Brahman as its reflection with her, then the reflection and the reflecting medium have got a relationship like Visheshana Vishesha Bhava. So the reflection appears to be conditioned by reflecting medium. Never the Supreme. The Supreme is whose reflection is in the Maya. But Supreme by itself is never conditioned. Therefore, the first doubt that rationalists ask, how can Maya condition the Supreme? We can say it has never conditioned the Supreme. Supreme is like Upahita, Maya is Upadhi. Therefore, there is no connection between Upahita and Upadhi. They are independent, like sun and the mud containing water, mud pot containing the water. No contact at all, no relationship. But its reflection of the sun in the water containing pot. So this water, the reflection, is appeared to be conditioned by the waters in the pot, right? So never the sun. So the Supreme Brahman, the Brahman, is never conditioned because it is independent of upadhi. Upadhi and upahita has no relationship, like the blue cloth and the crystal. There are no, however you may keep one over the other and all that, but they never, there is no entry of the blue cloth in the crystal. It cannot enter, it remains outside. So this is upadhi upahita relationship between Brahman and Maya. Because Maya has now become a different like upadhi. Earlier it was not different from Brahman. It was Jnanamayam Brahma, Aham Brahma, ityadi. But when the Brahman, so to say, became conscious of the inherent power Maya, that was the occasion when Maya became the object of his consciousness. And this opportunity Maya is taking to receive the reflection of Brahman, and then that becomes Maya and its reflection of Brahman together are responsible for creation. Not the Brahman itself, but its reflection in Maya. This level we have to appreciate first. Therefore, the start of creation is when there is infinite awareness, which is the nature of awareful being, that is Paramatma. Paramatma has within itself its nature as infinite awareness, and there is, in the infinite awareness, there is a Prakriti potential called as Avyakrita, unmanifest Prakriti. It is in the awareness only. Possibility is in the awareness only. So awareness itself is nothing but the all different levels of Maya only. Maya becomes the infinite awareness, then it becomes the pure consciousness, then it becomes Chidabhas. They are all levels of Maya only. Agreed? So now we are at the level of infinite. When Swamiji refers to infinite, it is awareness. Now in the infinite awareness, the potentially present as unmanifest Avyakrita Prakriti, unmanifest Prakriti, draws the power from awareness, and then it is capable of raising the Sankalpa. So Sankalpa belongs to Prakriti, first of all, not to the infinite awareness. But then this Prakriti itself was potentially the possibility in the awareness. It now manifests in the form of Sankalpa. So the unmanifest Avyakrita Prakriti manifests as first Sankalpa. This is all to be considered within ourselves. I am Paramatma. Then I become infinite awareness. By the mistake of identification, when I become conscious of my own nature, then the nature becomes prominent and the Atma becomes secondary. So infinite awareness becomes prominent. The infinite awareness itself, another form of Maya only, but within that, there is potential possibility of unmanifest Prakriti to draw power from awareness and raise the Sankalpa. Because we have seen that every thought requires a delta energy to manifest. Unmanifest to manifest, it requires energy. That energy is drawn from awareness. With that energy, the Prakriti is able to manifest itself in the form of Sankalpa. This is first Sankalpa within us. So Ekoham, don't take it to the, now we have got the so far habit of discussing totality, individuality, and then the Ishvara, Jiva, etc. But don't touch the Ishvara concept now, immediately. First we have to see how, why and wherefore of this creation. And when Swamiji says it's all individual, we don't have to consider anything vaster than the individual. In the individual, there is mind and intellect. This is to be considered as manifest form of Maya or Prakriti. Okay. Now the Maya at the individual level, we know it is called as avidya. So the avidya is unmanifest and its manifest form is thought or sankalpa. The first thought. This is the this is the background for the jiva. Jiva is not aware at this moment. Jiva is not even aware of pure consciousness. Jiva is not even aware of Chidabhas. Jiva is only conscious of the world of OET and his own imaginations. But how it all began? It began with the first thought. First thought is where he becomes self-conscious and said, I alone am. This is ekoham. The infinite awareful being became infinite awareness, which has potential of unmanifest prakriti called as avyakrita. Avyakrita means unmanifest. This unmanifest prakriti drew power from the infinite awareness, and that power is utilized in raising the first sankalpa. So therefore, we can say the statement made by Swamiji, that there is a sankalpa in the infinite. I am awareful being. I became awareness, infinite. Then within me there was a potential of Prakriti. Now you see, in the deep sleep state, what happens in the deep sleep state? Our Prakriti is in unmanifest form. Vasanas are in unmanifest form. Avidya is in unmanifest form. This is all Prakriti in the deep sleep state. How suddenly the Vasanas became powerful to assert themselves in the deep sleep state, and they overpower the deep sleep state, and then the dream state starts. What makes the deep sleep state convert into dream? Because in the deep sleep state, there is only pure consciousness. This is lower level. What we are discussing, it is lower than that. In the deep sleep state, the reality is, it is fully pervading pure consciousness, and there is nothing like avidya and vasana. Vasana we can say in the seed form. Nothing like avidya, because avidya maybe is that which is not. Na vidyamana, that which is not present. So avidya we are not counting much. What we are counting is the seeds of vasanas, which is called as avyakrita, unmanifest vasanas. When this pure consciousness itself is capitalized, power is available, and those vasana seeds assert themselves, a given particular vasana, and it drops power from pure consciousness, and then the deep sleep state is converted into dream state, and then the jiva starts, the individual starts dreaming. Now the dream is nothing but manifestation of vasanas, first in the dream state. Then there are certain vasanas which require to be physically fulfilled. Therefore, then it comes back to waking state. There the vasana becomes desire, desire becomes the agitation, passions, etc. And the person is motivated or influenced by desire to fulfill. So commits to the desire prompted activity. So this exactly must have happened at a higher level also. It is not suddenly pure consciousness. You referred, Shobha, to pure consciousness. Before that, it was infinite awareness. In the infinite awareness, there was a potential of unmanifest Prakriti in the seed form. And it wanted, the seed by itself cannot germinate ridicule or plumule or all that. This sense is not possible unless it gets the power. In the case of seed, the water provides that power. Okay, without water, seed cannot sprout out. Similarly, here also, without awareness, the seeds of the Prakriti cannot manifest. When that power of awareness is available, it is capitalized and the first Sankalpa is made. In the first Sankalpa, the awareful being, Paramatma, becomes self-conscious and he says, I alone am. And then he wants to play now, to become many. So that is the occasion when the Prakriti can capitalize. Okay, give me your power and I will become the Sankalpa, and the Sankalpa itself will become in various levels as creations of names and forms, where the Paramatma or the infinite awareness becomes untouched, not doing anything. Then this Paramatma's next level is Purusha, which is reflected in the thought, the Sankalpa. And the Purusha appears to identify it as Sankalpaka and assumes the role of a thinker with reference to that thought. So thus the Maya, which is in the form of Prakriti, unmanifest, manifest as Sankalpa, is able to create the duality. What is that duality? The thinker and the thought. The Sankalpa and Sankalpaka. This is the first duality created by Maya. And the reflection there as such, which is awareness, infinite awareness, it remains intact. It is not at all identifying with it, but its power is drawn by the Prakriti. But now, with the Sankalpa, the awareness comes down to the lower level as consciousness and becomes conscious of Sankalpa. This is the lower level. At the higher level, it's only the power of awareness drawn by the unmanifest Avyakrita Prakriti to raise the first Sankalpa. Now the Sankalpa is there, and the awareness becomes consciousness to become conscious of Sankalpa. So at the awareness level, there is no such objectification. But at the consciousness level, there is an object of consciousness. So the pure consciousness becomes conscious of this Sankalpa. And in his presence, in the presence of pure consciousness, which is otherwise called as Purusha, and the other one is Prakriti. Now the game starts, actual. But it is initiated at the level of infinite awareness. Therefore, Sankalpa first appeared in the infinite. But the infinite is independent of Sankalpa. Sankalpa required power to come into being from the infinite. So thus, Sankalpa in the infinite is the beginning of creation, manifest creation. And then this Sankalpa has to, when the Sankalpa is become conscious of, Sankalpa is being conscious of by pure consciousness. This level is lower level. Higher level is infinite awareness and first Sankalpa. Lower level is the awareness has become consciousness and he becomes conscious of Sankalpa. This, when thus the consciousness grants life to the first Sankalpa, then the Sankalpa has chances of multiplying it with the help of, again, the power of pure consciousness only, which is called as Purusha. Purusha and Prakriti. This is the game now going on. In Gita also it is very well described in the 15th chapter. So Purusha, Prakriti. And beyond these two is Purushottama. If you see those verses, So there's a clear-cut description in these levels of consciousness. So the Purusha is pure consciousness, and Prakriti is the Sankalpa, which is an object of consciousness. This is the pair. And from this onward, then in the presence of consciousness, the Sankalpa, one Sankalpa gives rise to another Sankalpa, and the chain of Sankalpas goes on. So this is how first we have to connect to the present level. The present first level we saw is only awareness, that is infinite, and Sankalpa in the infinite. This is the first level. Then the consciousness, which becomes conscious of Sankalpa, second level. Now in order to identify, later on it assumes the role of Sankalpaka, that is thinker. He becomes thinker and objectifies the thought. See, to become conscious of Sankalpa is not objectification. I'm conscious of, but consciousness as such is independent of thought. Whether there is a thought or not, consciousness is there. If consciousness is not there, there is no thought. Okay. So now the consciousness, in the presence of consciousness, the thought thrives and there are chances of more thoughts. What happens is, when the consciousness assumes the role of a thinker and objectifies the thought. Now it is the third level. Awareness first level, consciousness second level, the thinker third level, where there is a clear-cut subject-object relationship. The thinker objectifies the thought. When it objectifies the thought, now it is a conducive condition to tickle the thinker by vasanas. Vasana is not just one sankalpa. There are so many in the store waiting. So now it can motivate the thinker to think further, and the vasana will provide the material for thought. And thus, one sankalpa will be instrumental in giving rise to different further sankalpas or thoughts. Now, with this discussion, now we can fall back to the statement. The statement is, they forget that the creation is only to those who are looking at the world from the ego bound. Therefore, we are not talking about creation in the totality. We don't know whether creation is really there or not. And Gaudapadacharya in Mandukya had, in his Karika, had successfully denied there is no such creation at all. It is only for those who are objectifying it. So it's only for the egoistic individual. Therefore, we don't touch that Ishvara aspect at this moment. Here, when Swamiji says it is individual mind and intellect equipment, therefore the intellect objectifies the thought, becomes the thinker, and he assumes the role of a thinker. Then it is convenient for the vasanas to pass on the buck to the thinker, who will crystallize the thoughts, and further the mind will get agitated. Mind will be concerned about it. It becomes restless. So then the individual has to fulfill those desires in order to end the restlessness. Thus, it goes to the physical level, and then the fulfillment of the desires becomes a urgent program for the individual. Now the channel is set. Now all the rest of the vasanas will come one by one, appear as thought, sankalpa. The thinker will identify it and say, identify in a sense, he say, yes, this is what I want. I've been restless for so many days. I don't know what is the cause for my restlessness. But when he identified the desire, he said, yes, this is the reason I have to fulfill this desire. So he joins the individual under the spell of avidya, ignorance. He identifies with the desire, kama kami, and he becomes the desirer. And that is most suitable for the vasanas. They want somebody to take the agency so that they can now produce more and more thoughts and load to the agent to get along with this, and thus fulfill the vasanas, exhaust the vasanas. Now the idiot is ignorant and he doesn't know that it is meant to as an outlet for the existing vasanas. Instead, he joins the desire and say it is, yes, it is my desire and I want to fulfill it. So kama kami, he becomes desirer of desires, and therefore now the individual unwittingly gets entangled into the natural process of vasanas, thoughts, desires, agitations, actions, etc. He unnecessarily gets entangled into it by identifying it and say it is my desire. And thus he gets entangled where the Prakriti is innocently doing it, her own programs of unmanifest to manifest, manifest to action and exhaust. This is what is the main plan, that the total vasanas which have been distributed to all the living beings according to the lot concerned. We do not know what is the basis, etc. But we are born with the vasanas. That is a fact. Every living being is born with certain vasanas and he is expressing it. So we are born with the vasanas. Now vasana wants to take the entry. They want the power, and the power of awareness allows first sankalpa. Then the consciousness encourages more and more. By the mistake of identification, consciousness becomes thinker, and the thinker identifies with thoughts, and thus allows the free channel for the vasanas to load more and more sankalpas, so that they progress. He becomes a fully occupied throughout his life. He is occupied with attending to the existing desires, and in the bargain cultivate few more desires in addition. This is the game. Individual unnecessary is suffering because of avidya, ignorance of his true nature, that he has nothing to do. He is Paramatma by nature. Paramatma has nothing to do with the Prakriti. Prakriti takes the benefit of presence of Paramatma, draws powers and raises the Sankalpa. So now the whole thing is clear. We are trying to understand the statement of Swamiji, the last statement, that there is a Sankalpa in the infinite. So now 10th para is revised again because of the gap of 2 weeks, and we have discussed this, that all those last 3 statements, they forget that the creation is only to those who are looking at the world from the ego bound attitude, jiva power. Therefore the creation is only for jiva, the jagat is only for jiva. Okay, the Lord has only to control both of them through the laws. And the second one is, the very Maya is nothing but the mind and intellect equipment in an individual. This we have discussed. Now, mind and intellect is the manifest form of avidya. Avidya at the causal level itself becomes mind and intellect at the individual level. Vasanas at the causal level itself becomes desire at the intellectual level. So likewise, there are levels, and the lower levels, they become grosser and more manifest. So likewise, this we have seen second statement also. And the last statement, is that the very Maya is nothing but the mind and intellect equipment in an individual, and this Maya itself is only an imagination, Sankalpa, in the infinite. This is the start of creation, and we are not aware of it. But this now, the commentary helps us become aware that we were first the infinite awareness. Before that, we were awareful being, Paramatma. And then we identified with awareness. Then that power is drawn by unmanifest Prakriti, etc. The whole link is to start from awareness. Therefore, we can say that the whole thing, process of creation, started with Paramatma. Though Paramatma is not concerned, but without him, nothing can start. In the grace of Paramatma, his nature as infinite awareness allowed the unmanifest Prakriti of Vyakrita to become manifest Vyakrita and Vikriti Sahita Vyakrita, and that is because the Prakriti drew power from the infinite awareness and that it utilizes for raising the first Sankalpa. Once the Sankalpa is raised, then the awareness comes down to the level of pure consciousness and objectifies the Sankalpa. Second level. Third level, in the intellect, it is recognized as the thought, and the consciousness assumes the role of a thinker. And this is the success of Maya, Avidya Maya, to create a Dvaita. The duality is created, the thinker and the thought. Thinker never says I am the thought. Thinker objectifies the thought. Therefore, he becomes a subject. So the subject-object created, Dvaita is created. And Maya, once successful, then Dvaita is responsible for all the multiplicity and variety. Thereafterwards, you don't have to bother. One thought will generate 10 more thoughts and it will provide the fuel for the thinker. Come on, think. There is a few more thoughts. How do you plan to manifest them and get the happiness? Because that is at the root of Vasana. To get rid of sorrow and to court the joy. This is the main concern of Vasana to manifest. Therefore, the ignorant individual ego identifies with the thought and says that yes, I want the happiness. I will become complete when I fulfill the happiness, the desire, and become happy. So thus the duality is created by Avidya Maya, and further this duality gives rise to multiplicity and variety of thoughts. And these thoughts are related to the world of objects. Therefore, the Vishaya Vrittis are created in the inner equipment and they are projected out as the objects of the world. So likewise, from the individual level only this all starts. So far, so good. Is there anything further to be discussed? So now we proceed with 1 hour of introduction and revision. Now we can proceed to the new paragraph, 11th. When thoughts flow, there is the intellect. And where there is the intellect, there is the expression of time and space. So the first 10th para, the topic of commentary was Maya Kalpita. Now the topic is Desha Kala Kalana. Swamiji is systematically taking one by one word in the same sequence of the text. So now Desha Kala Kalana is being commented in the 11th. When the thoughts flow, there is the intellect. And where there is intellect, there is the expression of time and space. And therefore, through them, we experience the world of flux and finitude. When these sankalpas, now they have become many now, not first. Now, when these sankalpas have ended, Maya is conquered. Yes, this was our topic yesterday. Please note. When these sankalpas have ended, Maya is conquered. And the pure self is recognized as infinite and eternal, immaculate and pure. So now it falls back to consciousness. Consciousness is reminded of its earlier state as infinite awareness. And then when it comes to infinite awareness, then later in that state when he becomes steadied at the seat of meditation, then the awareful being is revealed to it. Then he becomes awareful being, the Paramatma, and that is the goal of Vedanta. For the Jivatma to become Paramatma is the goal. So once he has become that, the evolution is complete. So now here the topic to be discussed immediately is how the intellect is responsible for the time and space. See now how it is turned. From thought flow, there is an intellect. For the one Sankalpa, there is no intellect. One Sankalpa is raised independently by Prakriti with the help of awareness. Okay. Now this is being recognized by consciousness. When the consciousness recognizes it, the first Sankalpa gets further power to regenerate more Sankalpas. And now the consciousness becomes the thinker. When the thinker is at the level of intellect, when there is a thought, there is an intellect. Equipment is there which manifests the unmanifested vasana into manifest thought. That equipment is called intellect. Okay. Now the intellect, before he is to deal with the number of thoughts, it is presupposed to have created space and time. Now, this concept has to be discussed. Swamiji has not mentioned given any explanation. His commentary is only to the point, and we have to elaborate that point. So what he says is, in the first statement itself, when thoughts flow, that means there is a now successive continuity of thoughts. First Sankalpa gave rise to second, and then second gave rise to many. So then there is a flow of thoughts. When the flow of thought is apparent now, then the intellect becomes immediately concerned with the provision for all these thoughts to exist and flow. The provision is the provision of time and space. So the intellect has to first be concerned about the space and time, long before it deals with the thoughts. So now we have to again fall back to first thought. When the first thought in the infinite is the starting statement. In the last para, it was the concluding statement of the last para. So the infinite, there is a point where the infinite and the thought, the space is created. The first thought itself means the assumption of space, because there is a thought and there is awareness who is aware of the thought. So when he is awareful of the thought, there has to be distance, because it has not, awareness has not agreed that he is thought. It is the thought in awareness, thought in infinite. Infinite has remained as infinite, but there is an appearance of thought in the infinite. Now, unless infinite identifies with it, infinite will not come down from its level. This is okay. Now, when the consciousness, it comes down to the level of consciousness and becomes conscious of thought, the first thought, there is a space created between consciousness and the thought. Then the consciousness identifies with the thought and becomes the thinker. Then now, crystal clear that thinker and thought is the duality created. But before that duality, the first thing is there is a space, a concept of space created in the intellect in order to see the thought. If the Sankalpa is in the infinite may not be even aware of it also. It is in the part of the, you can say it is part of infinite, or it is in the infinite, whatever you say, but it will not be a separate concern when it is within. But when awareness becomes aware of the Sankalpa, level is lost and it becomes consciousness, conscious of the first thought. When the consciousness becomes conscious of first thought, the first level of understanding is that the thought is not different from consciousness. Like the wave is not different from ocean. So it is in the expanse of consciousness. There is only one thought, which is a sort of a vritti in consciousness. But when that vritti consciousness is objectified, finally Maya is interested, avidya Maya is interested in making them a duality. Now at present, the thought is in consciousness. Thought is not different. Wave is in the ocean. We cannot say ocean is in the waves. Number of waves also together don't constitute the ocean. Ocean is much more than all the waves put together. They are on the surface, and the ocean is much deeper than the superfluous waves. Therefore, ocean is the total, and wave is only an individual appearance in the total expanse. So, in the total expanse of consciousness, the thought is reason. One thought is reason. And when consciousness becomes conscious of, it means the thought becomes the object of consciousness. Now here we are discussing like an object. Consciousness means I myself. I am the awareful being. I become the awareness. Then I become the consciousness. Then I become conscious of thought. When I objectify the thought, there appears to be a space between myself and the thought. This assumption, without this we cannot proceed. If I am the thought, then there is no space. But I am consciousness. I am conscious of thought. Therefore, I, the consciousness and thought, the appearance of a form, there is a gap. This distance, this is indicative of space. This is the first thing. Time comes later. First is space, then is time. Because we have already defined time as, who will complete? Time is
Akashat Akasha.
that is Akasha. Now time.
Interval
Interval
between
between two thoughts.
interval between two thoughts.
Two successive thoughts.
Hmm.
Interval between two successive thoughts is time. Science defines time as an interval between two events. That is outside. But it all begins inside, in the form of thought. So we can say time is an interval between two successive thoughts. So the first thought has already arrived, and now the space is created between consciousness and thought by avidya only, not understanding that thought cannot be independent of consciousness. Thought is because of consciousness. From consciousness, the thought has risen. Because of consciousness, it is being sustained. Unto consciousness, it has to merge back. But this is not known. Therefore, the avidya influence continues and consciousness objectifies the thought as if something is different. It is not different from consciousness, but since it is objectified, there is a space between consciousness and first thought. And the time element is the gap between first thought and the second thought. So with the second thought, the time starts. That's why we have seen the first unit of time is second. Second means second. 1 second means 1 second means 1 second. Because it is a gap between first thought and the second thought. So time is later, space is first. Space is between consciousness and first thought. Time is between first thought and second thought. But when the time and space is set, the entire construction of the world of OET is built on these two factors. The entire world depends upon time-space elements. These are fake, but we have accepted it. Space, I am here, that is there, space. I was, I am, I want to be in future, time. So this is the further trick of mind. Time is a trick of mind. Space happens at the intellectual level, but both are attributed here to the intellect. So time and space is the creation in the intellect. This is the statement, that first statement, when thoughts flow means it requires number of thoughts. First thought, second thought, third thought, and many thoughts. So this then constitutes the flow. Now this thought flow is the intellect. When there is a consistent flow of thought, then we have a feeling that there is something like intellect. There is no such box or a machine inside called intellect. It is only considered when the thoughts flow in continuity or in succession, then it is called the intellect. And where there is the intellect, there is the expression of time and space. So the expression of time and space, again projected by Maya, Avidya, Vasana, is the projection of time and space. In consciousness, there is no time and space. But with reference to time, with the reference to thought, there is space and there is time. In consciousness, it's free from time and space, because consciousness is all pervasive. There is no room for any other object. So therefore it is all pervasive. There is no space. It is all occupying everything. And time is not at all concerned, because it is later a creation of intellect. Therefore, in consciousness, space and time is not there. In case of time, it is called timeless. It is beyond time. In case of space, it is called all pervasive. Therefore, there is no space where that the consciousness is not. Thus, time and space are not there in consciousness, but in the intellect, where the consciousness first becomes thinker, and thinker identifies with the intellect as thought, and therefore this creation of space and time. So this is the first statement we have seen. Now, therefore, through them, that is time, space, we experience the world of flux and finitude. So this is now, flux is change. Continuously in the state of flux means continuously change. First thought, second thought, the content of first thought, content of second thought, and it goes on, layers together and keeps on changing. This is the first, one of the important characteristic of Maya, that it keeps on changing. It goes on different levels till it comes to the level of objects, names and forms. So this is a reference to the flux. And finitude is when there is more than one, each thought will condition another thought. Therefore, here the first thought ends, there the second thought begins. Therefore, there is a gap between two thoughts, and thus both the thoughts become finite. So there is a finitude right from thought onwards everywhere, while the consciousness is all pervasive, and further it is, when it is without reference to any object, the same all pervasive consciousness is infinite awareness without reference to any object. With reference to objects, it is all pervasive consciousness. So either way, there is no scope for time and space in consciousness, much less in awareness. But now that the thought and the series of thoughts have begun, each thought is finite. It has a beginning and an end, and there are a number of thoughts. Therefore, this is, and each thought is different from the other. Therefore, there is a sense of change at every thought. Even the thought itself goes through different levels of unmanifest, manifest activities, etc. Therefore, there is a continuous flux and finitude. This is the second part of the first statement. So here we would like to take a pause because of our time, and rest of the balance part of the para we have to work out. And here today we have started with the 10th para, in the basic concept from where the Sankalpa has its origin, and we have seen that Paramatma itself is the starting point of creation. Then his nature as infinite awareness becomes instrumental in giving power to the Sankalpa. Then the Sankalpa becomes strong and it demands another Sankalpa, thus creating a space, time, etc. And then the Sankalpa itself becomes finite and keeps on changing. It is not the same thought repeated like quantity. Each thought has a different content, and that goes to the number of vasanas that we have, different vasanas. So likewise we have covered up to this. Now balance para will cover next time. Yasya prasadadameva Vishnu Mayeva sarvam parikalpitancha Itham vijanami sadatmarupam Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. Om Sri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. Hari Om everybody.